505 confirmed kills, 100 days, one man. Simo Häyhä earned a title that still echoes through military history, the White Death. But the record he set during Finland's Winter War wasn't built on advanced technology or superior firepower. It was achieved with something far more unsettling: precision born from absolute stillness. December 1939. Finland faces an invasion force that dwarfs its own military. The Soviet Union rolls across the border with over 1 million men, thousands of tanks, and a conviction that this will be over quickly. The Finns have roughly 300,000 soldiers, outdated equipment, and a landscape most armies would consider unlivable. But they know something the Soviets don't. Winter in Finland isn't just cold, it's a weapon. Simo Häyhä was a farmer before the war. Born in a village near the Russian border, he spent his early years doing what most rural Finns did: farming, hunting, skiing, through endless forests. Nothing about him suggested he'd become the deadliest sniper in recorded history. At 17, he joined the Finnish Civil Guard, where something unexpected happened. He discovered he could shoot. Really shoot. Target competitions became his proving ground. The rifle he trained with, a Finnish variant of the Mosin Nagant, known as the M28-30, became an extension of his body. Through relentless practice, he reached a firing rate that shouldn't have been possible: 16 accurate shots per minute at a range of 150 meters. For a bolt-action rifle that held only 5 rounds per clip, this was extraordinary. Most soldiers struggled to achieve half that speed. When the Soviets invaded, Simo was 33 years old. He reported to the Kala front, a stretch of Finnish territory that would become legendary for its brutal fighting. The numbers there were staggering. At one point, Simo and just 31 other Finnish soldiers faced down 4,000 Soviet troops. Standard military doctrine would call this a massacre waiting to happen. It was. Just not the massacre the Soviets expected. Simo developed a routine that bordered on ritualistic. He'd dress in full winter camouflage, pack a day's worth of supplies, and crawl to his chosen position before dawn. Then he'd wait. Temperatures dropped to -40 degrees, cold enough that exposed skin would freeze in minutes. He'd sit motionless in that cold for hours, sometimes an entire day, waiting for targets to present themselves. But waiting wasn't passive. Every detail mattered. He'd pack snow in front of his position to prevent muzzle blast from disturbing the powder and giving away his location. He kept snow in his mouth to stop his breath from forming visible vapor in the frozen air. These weren't tactics he learned from a manual. This was survival thinking, the kind that only comes from truly understanding your environment. The rifle he carried was the same M28-30 he'd trained with in the Civil Guard. It featured distinctive front sights called the Spitz, because they resembled the ears of a Spitz dog. Here's what made Simo different from almost every other sniper. He refused to use a scope. Soviet snipers had scopes. Most professional marksmen preferred them. Simo saw them as a liability. Scopes could fog in extreme cold. They could reflect sunlight and reveal your position to enemy counter-snipers. They raised your head higher above cover. So Simo stuck with iron sights, zeroed at 150 meters, the most common engagement distance he encountered. It was a decision that seemed to put him at a disadvantage. The Soviets would soon learn otherwise. On December 21, 1939, Simo achieved something that still seems impossible. 25 confirmed kills in a single day, not sprayed gunfire into a crowd. Individual deliberate shots. Each one a Soviet soldier who never saw him, never heard him, never knew what hit them. The Red Army was beginning to realize they had a problem. Word spread through Soviet ranks. Whispers at first, then urgent warnings. There was someone out there in the snow. Someone who couldn't be seen, couldn't be predicted, couldn't be stopped. Soldiers began calling him the White Death. For the Red Army, this wasn't just a morale problem. This was tactical chaos. Officers couldn't advance their units without wondering if the next step would be their last. 3 platoon leaders had already been killed by a single Soviet sniper when command assigned Simo to eliminate the threat. He found his position and settled in, scanning the tree line. Hours passed. The winter sun began its early descent, and that's when Simo saw it. A brief glint of light reflecting off glass. The enemy sniper's scope had betrayed him, the exact vulnerability Simo had avoided by using iron sights. As the Soviet marksman stood to leave his position, Simo fired once. The threat was over, but the Soviets weren't giving up. Counter-sniper teams were deployed specifically to hunt Simo. Artillery strikes were called in on suspected positions. They were throwing resources at a single Finnish soldier that would normally be reserved for entire battalions. Think about what that means strategically. One man had become enough of a threat that the Soviet military machine felt compelled to divert significant assets just to stop him. It didn't work. Simo kept moving, kept adapting, kept firing. Then he did something that expanded his legend even further. When situations demanded rapid fire instead of precision shooting, Simo switched to a Suomi submachine gun. With it, he's credited with another 200 kills. This wasn't a man limited to one style of combat. This was complete battlefield adaptability. The numbers are almost incomprehensible. By the end of the Winter War, Simo Häyhä was credited with 505 confirmed sniper kills. 505 individual Soviet soldiers, each one a deliberate shot. He achieved this in roughly 100 days of combat during the darkest months of the year when daylight was scarce. No sniper in recorded history has matched this record, not even close. March 6, 1940. The war was in its final week. Simo was in position when a Soviet infantryman fired an explosive round that struck him directly in the face. The bullet tore through his left jaw, destroyed teeth, and left him unrecognizable. Finnish soldiers evacuated him just before Soviet forces overran the position. He was unconscious when Finland and the Soviet Union signed their peace treaty on March 13th. Doctors didn't expect him to survive. He woke up 11 days later. The left side of his face was destroyed. Multiple surgeries would be required to reconstruct his jaw. Recovery would take years. But Simo Häyhä was alive. Finland decorated him with numerous military honors. He was promoted from corporal directly to second lieutenant, skipping every rank in between, an almost unheard-of jump that reflected the magnitude of his service. A Swedish businessman named Eugen Johansson even presented him with a custom-made honorary rifle. Simo lived quietly after the war. He returned to farming and hunting, the same activities that had shaped him before he became the deadliest sniper in history. He rarely spoke about his wartime experiences. When asked how he became so effective, his answer was simple: practice. When pressed about how he felt about the kills, he said he only did what he was told to do, to the best of his ability. He lived to be 96 years old, passing away in 2002. For a man who spent 100 days at war being hunted by an entire army, he ended up outliving most of his generation. The White Death survived everything the Soviet Union threw at him, then lived another 62 years in peace. Simo Häyhä never set out to become a legend. He was a farmer who knew how to shoot, thrust into a war where his skills became the difference between survival and annihilation. 505 lives ended through his scopeless rifle, each shot a calculation of wind, distance, and patience most people can't fathom. The Soviets called him the White Death, but Finland called him something else. Exactly what they needed when the odds were impossible. His story isn't just about numbers. It's about what happens when absolute skill meets absolute necessity in the frozen silence of war.